What is going on, guys? Hey, I wanted to talk to you about something that I normally don't do. I wanted to talk to you about the film Anarchy USA, which was filmed back in 1966. So 57 years ago. And this film talks about how communism will take over the United States and how they've taken over so many parts of the world and what steps they implement to take over a country from the inside out. And if we are truly honest with ourselves, we have got to admit that, you know what, yeah, a lot of these steps, they have been happening. And we definitely find ourselves in many of these situations over the last few years. Definitely do. But hey guys, if you would, please like, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Thanks.
Anarchy, the breakdown of law and order, a chaotic reign of terror, mob rule and rioting, the collapse of government authority. These phrases ring strange in the ears of Americans, and for good reason. Through the years, America has stood as the world symbol for law and order. Our government is responsive to the will of the people. Our courts and legislatures provide the mechanics for a peaceful redress of grievances. And the policeman on the corner has traditionally been looked upon as a friend, not as the instrument of a tyrant. Anarchy, well, that was something we read about in our newspapers that was always happening in other countries. Perhaps the people in other countries had just reasons to riot against their governments. After all, many of the nations of the world are dictatorships in one form or another. What business was it of ours, anyway? Newsworthy, perhaps, but it could never happen here. Then, in the summer of 1964, widespread rioting and looting suddenly broke out in Harlem, in Rochester, in Newark, in Jersey City, in Philadelphia, Cleveland, and Chicago, all within a few days of each other. It was as though an unseen hand had given the signal. Then, on August 18th, 1965, guns replaced nightsticks in the hands of law enforcement officers as the Watts area of Los Angeles literally burst into a cauldron of insurrection. Thousands of rioters roamed the streets both night and day, smashing and looting, and setting the torch to over 50 square miles of the city. Hidden snipers held police and firefighters at bay as fires raged unabated. At least 35 Americans died in the violence and gunfire. The sheer magnitude of this monstrous madness strained the abilities of the civil authorities, and the California National Guard was sent to Watts with orders to quell the violence with brute force if necessary.
The most powerful enemy can be conquered only by exerting the utmost effort and by thoroughly, carefully, attentively, and skillfully taking advantage of even the smallest rift, of every antagonism of interest among the various groups or types within the various countries.
Divide the people. Split them into quarreling factions, fighting among themselves rather than their common enemy. This is the comrades' first rule for the conquest of any country. For well do they know from long experience that the nation so divided and weakened can be easily conquered from within.
You know what, guys, man, we got to be honest, man. Things are more divided now than what they've ever been, at least in recent history in this country. And, you know, the thing is, man, people, they believe that things are not equal in this country. And that's not true. Things are equal within this country. Again, not everything is going to wind up the same, because there's a multitude of reasons why things don't wind up being the same. Like, you know, like there should be an equal portion of these people that do want to do this, or these people that want to do this, or No, again, just like women and men. You know, there are more women that tend to go into fields like nursing than men. There are more men that tend to go into business or engineering than women. And again, we got to understand that's not due to discrimination. That's due to what they choose to go into. But again, people, they want to claim that racism or sexism is the reason why things are the way they are. It's not. It's not. Again, you can have full equality under the law, which we have, which is all you can ever do. Make things equal under the law and step back. That's all you can do. Man, again, people are going to say, they're going to scream and yell because, again, they don't want to look at themselves as the reasons why things may be the way they are. They don't want to look at their own life, their own decisions as to why things may be the way they are in their own life. And they got to blame somebody else for it. But again, man, people are being divided. They're being divided, and there's no good reason. Again, we're not fighting for equality. There is equality. Everything is equal under the law, which is all you can ever make it.
We're ready to move into phase 2 of the communist blueprint for takeover. Create the appearance of popular support. In every country now part of the Red Slave Empire, the actual number of Communist Party members at the time of takeover has been less than 1% of the total population. As Lenin phrased it,
communism must be built with non-communist hands.
By cleverly beguiling thousands of well-intentioned people into unwittingly supporting the revolutionary program, the dedicated 1% can trick the 99% into surrendering their birthright. This they do by hiding the true communist objectives behind appealing slogans and pretended humanitarian goals. As Stalin explained,
the revolutionary accepts reform in order to use it as a cover for his illegal work.
In China, the propaganda mills were active in championing Mao's agrarian reform. The propagandists portrayed in vivid detail the hardships and injustices of the Chinese peasant. The communists popularized the slogan, "Land to the tiller." Mao Zedong exclaimed, "We are not striving for the social and political communism of Russia. Rather, we prefer to think of what we are doing as something Lincoln fought for in the Civil War, the liberation of slaves." In the United States, those books which praised Mao Zedong as non-communist and an agrarian reformer were advocated reading, and some even became book club selections. It was later revealed that many of the pro-communist books and articles were written and reviewed in this country by communists. The American people, unaware of the treachery, were conditioned to accept the enslavement of China's millions. Cubans rallied round the slogan, "Patria o muerte." But perhaps the most widely used slogan was the one later to be used in Haiti and Venezuela, and still later in English in the United States. "Venceremos. We shall overcome."
You know what, guys, man, we have got to understand that the level of support here, like in our current situation, with the whole transgender stuff and the whole gender affirming care, and racism, again, they don't initially feel a certain way, but then they are indoctrinated. Again, they're teaching kids in schools. Again, they're teaching people through the media, telling people how to think. Hey, you're oppressed. You're gay, you're oppressed. You're trans, you're oppressed. You're black, you're oppressed. You're oppressed. And so they reinforce that over and over and over and over and over again until people believe it's true. Again, there is full equality under the law, which is all you can ever have. But again, they have people convinced that, hey, look, man, things aren't equal. They have people convinced that every time that there's a disparity, it's due to racism, it's due to sexism, it's due to people being transphobic, it's due to people being homophobic. And again, man, we have got to understand that they are indoctrinating you. Again, every time you click on social media, every time you turn on the TV, they are indoctrinating you.
After the communists have found some issue or point of difference upon which they can divide the people, get them fighting among themselves rather than their common enemy, the next step is to create the appearance of popular support for the communists' war of national liberation. They have been devastatingly successful thus far. Yet in one country after another, there have been alert, informed individuals who saw the signs, recognized the patterns of conquest, and raised their voices to warn the people. Against just such a contingency, the communists developed the third phase of their blueprint for world domination: neutralize the opposition.
We can and must write in a language which sows among the masses hate, revulsion, and scorn toward those who disagree with us.
A Communist Party directive issued in 1943 reads,
Members and front organizations must continually embarrass, discredit, and degrade our critics. When obstructionists become too irritating, label them as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic. Constantly associate those who oppose us with those names which already have a bad smell. The association will, after enough repetition, become fact in the public mind.
Again, what are they doing right now? Again, they're saying things like racist, transphobic, homophobic. And again, if you repeat something enough, it's going to be taken as fact, even though there's full equality, again, under the law, which is all you can ever have. It's illegal to discriminate against people. It's illegal to discriminate against people based on your sex, your religion, your race. But again, man, people, people nowadays, they will bend over backwards to show, hey, look, I'm not racist. I'm not sexist. I'm not homophobic. I'm none of these things. I will bend over backwards for you. But again, they don't care. They don't care. They don't care. There is full equality under the law. They don't care. They don't care that people bend over backwards to show they're not racist, they're not sexist, they're not whatever. But again, they don't care. They don't care because, again, they will still accuse you of being so. And again, if you say something over and over and over again, it will be taken as fact, even though it's not.
The next step in the communist strategy is the most easily recognized, for it consists of the tactic of getting masses into motion, and thus precipitating mob violence. Master psychologists that they are, the communists know that once the masses are in the streets, it's not too difficult to convert an orderly demonstration into a full-scale riot. They know, too, that when rioting occurs, police and military forces of the government must move to restore law and order, and thus they have the first visible signs of revolution.
Riots, demonstrations, street battles, detachments of a revolutionary army. Such are the stages in the development of the popular uprising.
The official constitution and program of the Communist Party stated in 1921,
The Communist Party will educate and organize the working masses for mass strikes and mass demonstrations. It is through struggles that the working masses are prepared for the final conflict for power. As these strikes grow in number and intensity, they acquire political character through unavoidable collision and open combat with the capitalistic state. Mass action culminates in insurrection and civil war.
In 1964, a communist document taken from the Viet Cong stated,
"Get the people out into the streets. Quarrels should be provoked. Youth groups are to be armed with knives and clubs, allegedly to protect themselves in a manufactured tension."
In China, as in all countries, the communist appeal was aimed primarily at students, young, idealistic intellectuals, most of whom came from wealthy families who could afford to send them to school. It was from this group that the young communist recruits came who later provided the leadership and backbone for the armed conflict to follow. In Cuba, leftist-oriented students were the vanguard of the organized street demonstrations. Once the masses were in motion, that tenuous line between demonstration and riot, between nonviolence and violence, was easily obliterated. As law enforcement officers sought to restore order, police brutality became the cry of the insurgents.
You know what, guys? Is this beginning to sound familiar? They're going after who? They're going after the young people. They're trying to indoctrinate the young people and to make them think that they are doing something worthy. They are doing something noble. Again, they're indoctrinating them to believe that racism is running rampant. That, again, that nothing is equal. Again, that laws aren't equal, nothing is equal. They're getting people out there in the street to protest, man, every time somebody of color dies at the hands of somebody who's not, even if they're wrong. And they will manufacture something, like in the case of Tyree Nichols, man, in Memphis. Again, he was killed by black officers. But the fact of the matter is, man, they can somehow ascribe white supremacy as the reason why they killed him, even though he was black and they were black. And again, they convince people and get out there in the streets, protest. Man, again, use your voice. They're using people. And again, who do you go after? Well, you go after people that are young. They have a little bit of means. Man, that are so-called educated. You go after them. You convince them, hey, look, man, there needs to be a revolution. You need to lead this. You need to get upset. Here's guns, here's knives, here's clubs. Do what you got to do. Because again, you're doing it for your future. And then, when the police step in, the police are like, hey, wait a minute, you're going too far. Then what happens? Police brutality. Yeah. It's really starting to sound familiar.
When marches and demonstrations turn into riots in any country slated for takeover, the communists are then ready to implement the final stage of their blueprint for conquest. It takes only a handful of armed opportunists, criminals and savages to create the semblance of revolution.
Only insurrection can guarantee the victory of the revolution. The purpose of insurrection must be not only the complete destruction or removal of all local authorities and the replacement by new, but also the expulsion of the landlords and the seizure of their lands.
Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist forces had long been fighting the communist-inspired insurrectionists of Mao Zedong when the Japanese invaded the mainland of China. With the end of World War II and the defeat of the Japanese, the United States pressured Chiang into forming a coalition government with the communists. Through a coerced truce and enforced arms embargo, the U.S. disarmed more than 30 divisions of Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist troops. And so it has been, with but minor variations in one country after another. Divide the people. Create the appearance of popular support. Neutralize the opposition. Precipitate mob violence. Create the semblance of a revolution. An accurate summary of Lenin's strategy for the conquest of the world is as follows.
First, we will take Eastern Europe. Next, the masses of Asia. Then we shall encircle the last bastion of capitalism, the United States of America. We will not have to attack. It will fall like overripe fruit into our hands.
You know what, guys? I don't know exactly what is going on here, but I do know one thing. We are going to lose this country one way or another unless we come together and work together as a group. We will lose this country. Again, things have been sped up over the last few years. There is something going on. Things have been sped up. And again, if you truly step back far enough and look, and I know, man, I'm probably talking to a lot of younger people, they don't have, I'm not talking down to you, but what I'm saying is you don't have the life experience. You did not see things beforehand. Maybe you were 17 or 16 or whatever when the pandemic hit. So again, you don't have the experience. So again, I'm not talking down to you. I'm just saying that you are not as aware of things beforehand because of your age. And you definitely are not aware of things before like 9/11, for instance. So again, I'm not talking down to people. I'm just saying I think people, younger people in particular, are very unaware of how things were beforehand. And they believe that, hey, it's always been the way it is now. And it hasn't. Again, I'm not saying things were always perfect, but things worked better years ago. In my lifetime, I was born in the 70s. And again, in the 80s and 90s, I became an adult in the 90s. Again, we saw this country together for the most part. Again, I'm not saying everything always worked well, but things were together for the most part. But what we're seeing now is just absolute chaos. And again, we are not going to keep this country this way. It's not going to happen. One way or another, this country will be taken away. And again, I believe that it's being taken away from the inside out. We are ruining ourselves. And again, I think it's planned. I think there are certain people that know how to use situations. And they're using people now. They're using situations and they're using people now for their own aims. But anyways, guys, if you would, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below.
You son of a